It was supposed to be a celebration that Samantha and her friends would remember for years. They were seniors at college, getting ready to graduate. Yet, little did they know that following the events that would unfold over this night, one of them would lose their lives. My name is Adrian, and in this video we're going to learn how one easy mistake, when in the wrong hands, could cost you your life. If you're new to Coffeehouse Crime, I post both solved and unsolved cases here on a weekly basis, so if true crime is your kind of thing, then please consider subscribing to the channel. Now, it's very easy to eye up the wrong car while waiting for an Uber, especially if you've had a drink or 3. But what happened to Samantha Josephson when she made that same mistake back in March 2019? Let's take a look and find out. Pull up a seat, grab a coffee and sit back. This is the case of Samantha Josephson. Let's talk about New Jersey for a moment, the state where Samantha's story begins. Located towards the northeastern corner of the US, New Jersey is a relatively small state. But it's also home to a population of almost 9 million people. With a multifaceted economy, New Jersey is primarily driven by the pharmaceutical, biotechnological, financial, and technological industries, therefore awarding it to be the state with the highest density of scientists per square mile. But it's also home to many folk who prefer the more down-to-earth way of life, helping it in being a major exporter of blueberries, cranberries, spinach, and peaches. And this may be one of the oldest facts that I will ever give, but did you know that 180 million years ago, the shore of New Jersey bordered with South Africa? Smack bang in the middle of New Jersey, and also between the cities of New York and Philadelphia, lies a small town called Princeton. Samantha was born here in the year 1998 to her mother Marcy and her father Seymour, and at a very similar age to her own was her sister Sydney. The family of 4 would continue to live nearby in the small township of Robbinsville. There was nothing out of the ordinary for Samantha or Sydney as they grew up. All things considered, they were 2 happy sisters with a loving family. And everyone loves the old family photos, right? Moving forward several years down the road to the year of 2015, Samantha attended the University of South Carolina where she planned to major in political science. And while there, she grew into her own personality, making many friends and falling in love with her boyfriend, Greg. The two met in 2017 at 5 Points, a popular destination for students. She was a member of the Alpha Gamma Delta sorority, and while at college she studied abroad in Barcelona and visited other exciting destinations like Madrid and Paris, even meeting her sister there on at least one occasion. Samantha was a very likable person. I know it's cliche to say, but her friends described her as someone who had a personality that would light up a room. And her infectious personality was met with high aspirations. She had plans to graduate in May of 2019 before attending Drexel University to study international law. But before Drexel, she still had some time left at the USC. In the early year of 2019, she was a senior. She had a few months left to complete her major, and a few months left to make some more memories with her friends along the way. You see, time was ticking for Samantha and her friends. It was the middle of March, and with final exams only a month away, everyone was studying hard to get ahead. But to flip the coin, all being seniors, they were only weeks away from going their own separate ways. And so with that said, they were looking to spend more time together while they could. No need to worry about the boyfriend right now. Greg had actually graduated a year prior and was back in Mount Pleasant about 2.5 hours away. Despite the distance, Greg and Samantha were very close to one another. Both enjoying sports, the two would often go to football games together and support their local team. They would also visit the neighbourhood where they first met called 5 Points to eat and drink. And even when they lived just a few minutes apart, they would video chat with each other almost every day. In Greg's own words, they did pretty much everything together. And the distance created when Greg moved home didn't stop their mutual energy either. Even now, they'd talk every day and every night. The date is March the 28th, 2019. And following some bad news back at home, Samantha was in a fairly low mood. For comfort, she pleaded Greg to come back to the USC to spend the night with her. But unfortunately, Greg was already busy, and they were going to see each other in a couple nights anyway. So he suggested to Samantha that maybe she should go out that night with friends to take her mind off the few things that were bothering her. And Greg was only a phone screen away from her anyway. They could keep in contact with each other and text all night. They even had an app installed on their phone called Find My Friends, an app that lets friends track each other's locations for security. Samantha agreed, and so on that note, it's time for drinks. At around 12:30 in the morning, Samantha and her friends arrived at the Bird Dog, located in 5 Points, Colombia. The Bird Dog was one of the group's favourite places to visit in the night. It was very popular with USC students. Music and cheap drinks would blend into the busy chatter all around. But while there, friends noticed that Samantha still wasn't in the happiest of moods. She often kept to the corners of the bar and would message Greg and others on her phone. It seemed as if all efforts to take her mind off her worries were not working, and later on in the night, she accidentally became separated from her friends. Alone and upset, Samantha decided to call it quits on the evening. And so just after 2 AM, she called Greg to let him know that she was on her way home. She lived a couple miles northwest on Main Street, and an Uber would ensure her safe return to her residence. A surveillance camera picked up Samantha on the phone to Greg at 2:06 AM. She was waiting for her driver to arrive, and so Greg was keeping her virtual company. And just as the minute turned to 12 minutes past 2, her apparent Uber driver arrived. He pulled into the disabled bay with his black Chevrolet Impala. Before the driver could even fully halt their vehicle, Samantha jumped into the bay and pulled the car's right rear passenger door open. She stepped in, and after a couple seconds, the door was shut. Seconds later, the black Chevrolet drives away. Surveillance cameras capturing it driving south-southeast on Hardin Street. However, almost straight away, Greg realised that something wasn't quite right with Samantha's journey. Although they'd just been on the phone, he was now tracking her using the Find My Friends app. And in that time realised that she was travelling the total opposite direction from her home. He tried to call her, but she never answered. He tried texting her, but those messages remained unread. He then tried to Snapchat her. Those too were never looked at. All in the meanwhile, her location was going further and further away from her apartment. Samantha's location continued to travel southeast. She reached the neighbourhood of Shandon. And after that, she reached Rosewood. And at 2:40 AM, 28 minutes since entering a supposed Uber car, Samantha disappeared off the map. Greg reached out to Samantha's housemates, but they too hadn't heard from her. Maybe Samantha did get home, but by accident she left her phone in the back seat of the Uber. So with that ideology in mind, Greg and her friends all went to sleep, expecting to hear from Sam in the morning. But when the morning came around, that sudden silence from Samantha would continue. She had the morning shift at a place of work named the Liberty Tap Room. And when Greg called to check if she had made it into her morning shift, he learned that surprisingly, she hadn't. It was in this moment that serious concerns started to rise for Greg and several of Samantha's friends. Samantha was nowhere to be found. She missed her work shift. She had even been tracked going in the opposite direction the night before. Something was seriously wrong with the entire situation. By 2 PM, the group had filed a missing persons report to local police. And in the meantime, Greg and friends started to search on their own accord. They called the hospitals and jails nearby, but no matches were found. And after that, the surrounding area of 5 Points was scanned. But no clues there either. Next, they focused on the Bird Dog. Greg, who had friends working in the bar, was allowed to go upstairs and check in on some of the surveillance footage. And sure enough, they would eventually spot Samantha Josephson outside shortly after 2 AM. The search party took this footage to the local police department, where they then gave their statements around Samantha's disappearance. However, just after completing these statements, the group were taken into a side room. Greg opened the door to see Samantha's parents. Long time no see, but the look on their faces described a very somber mood. They were full with distraught and sadness. The search for Samantha Josephson was already over. She had been found dead just hours earlier, 65 miles southeast from where she disappeared in Colombia. She had been viciously attacked, her body riddled with more puncture wounds than any officer could count. Samantha's family, friends, and Greg were all distraught. And, even worse, what Greg had just realised in that moment is what he'd virtually witnessed the night before was his own girlfriend's kidnapping and murder. As the answer to the question of what happened to Samantha Josephson slowly settled in, a new question emerged in its wake. And that question was why? Why was Samantha Josephson dead? I mean, it looked like someone killed her, but who would do such a thing? What was their motive? Some early leads had already been made with thanks to Greg and his friends. They were already able to confirm her whereabouts the previous night, obtaining CCTV footage of her sliding into an Uber car just after 2 AM. And another friend had made a substantial discovery too. Upon breaking into her laptop and reading her emails, it was discovered that the Uber ride the night before had actually been cancelled by the driver. Samantha never showed up to the right vehicle. It seemed that whatever the car Samantha stepped into was not actually her driver. She had inadvertently walked up to a stranger's car, opened the door, and stepped inside. These clues were a great start for police. From day one, they had confirmed footage of a location, a time, a suspect, a direction, and most importantly, a vehicle. While the driver may not necessarily be responsible for her death, they could at least help in retracing Samantha's final steps. But upon further analysis of this surveillance footage, officers would actually find the same vehicle lurking around the area for quite some time. In fact, after spotting Samantha on her own, it actually made a U-turn before picking her up. Strange. Things are now beginning to look a little premeditated. Therefore, all cops in the nearby areas were told to be on the lookout for a black Chevy Impala, and to profile any driver who was found in one. And conveniently, they wouldn't have to wait long. It was at 3:23 AM on the 30th of March, a mere 26 hours after Samantha's disappearance, that a canine handler and police officer by the name of Jeffrey Kraft spotted a lookalike vehicle driving in front of him. The location wasn't even a quarter of a mile south of the bird dog, and so the vehicle was of great interest. After a couple minutes of following the Impala and eventually flashing his lights, the driver took a turn down a residential road and pulled over. And what followed next was, well, just watch.
Alright, man. Who's smoking the marijuana?
I had smoked some earlier, sir, when I was at home.
Alright. Alright, man, you're gonna have to step on out, man. Alright, here's the deal, man. I pulled your car over because it matches the suspect. Get your hand in your pocket. What are you, crazy? Get over here. Hey, get over here! Come on, run! Hey, I'm gonna release the dog! I can't, I was just gonna see if he'll stop. Bravo Mike wearing a gray sweatpants, gray sweatshirt. Doors blocked, 500 block. Nunez, keep going. He's going to be on your left.
This guy didn't do a very good job at hiding, however, as only 2 minutes later, colleagues responding to Officer Kraft's alert would catch up and find the runaway. Upon his capture, and then arrest after running away from police, they would discover that his name was Nathaniel Rowland, and he had all the reason to worry. Born in 1995, Nathaniel was 24 at the time. He grew up in the nearby area in a place none other than New Zion, around 65 miles southeast of Columbia. He attended and studied at East Clarendon School. had an interest in basketball, and graduated in 2012. And his coach described him as a great kid with a very involved family. But things were not so positive in his more recent years. Scratching the surface, he had several traffic violations, mostly for not wearing a seatbelt, and he was also charged with an open container of alcohol back in February of 2018. But there was a much more serious offence looming under Nathaniel's name. On the 19th of October 2018, he was allegedly one of two men to abduct a woman by carjacking at a traffic light. They assaulted her, forced her to drive to an ATM, took all of her money, and then forced her to drive to her own home, where they then allegedly took items including a PlayStation 4 before fleeing. Just several hours later, Nathaniel then sold some of those items at a pawn shop. But investigators were able to track those stolen items from the woman to the pawn shop to Nathaniel. He was arrested and then charged with obtaining goods under false pretenses valued at $2,000 or less, but he was not charged with the alleged carjacking or kidnapping. Investigations from this point forward would unfortunately paint a very obvious story. A large amount of blood was found not just in the trunk, but all over the passenger seats too. The blood was a harrowing enough detail, but they would then also find Samantha's mobile phone in the glove box of the car, officially linking Nathaniel and Samantha together for the first time. They would also find liquid bleach, germicidal wipes, and a window cleaner, expressing an attempt to clean the vehicle. And when investigators searched Nathaniel's house, they would find more cleaning supplies and a two-bladed knife, both of which had Samantha's blood on them. Samantha's blood was also found on a bandana, a sock, and under Nathaniel's fingernails. The evidence just kept building up. Nathaniel Rowland was charged with kidnapping, murder, and possession of a weapon during the commission of a crime. And on the 20th of July 2021, Nathaniel Rowland's trial began. As you can expect, things didn't go well for him. During the trial, prosecutors called 31 witnesses, including the turkey hunter who found Samantha's body, Nathaniel's former girlfriend, and numerous state law enforcement division investigators and other experts. CCTV played in court would find Nathaniel Rowland stalking the area of 5 Points as early as 25 minutes before picking up Samantha. He was seen prowling the area numerous times, even making U-turns around the bird dog in search for a potential victim. After spotting Samantha alone and on her phone, trying to get into the back of another vehicle which she mistook for her Uber, Nathaniel, whose Impala was just 2 cars behind, took the opportunity. When Samantha was finally in, Nathaniel activated the child locks, meaning that the doors could only be opened from the outside, therefore trapping Samantha inside the vehicle. This is a detail that we may never know, but even if Samantha had caught on to her kidnapping the second she shut the door, no one would have been able to hear her screaming from the vehicle, as on the other side of the glass, loud music, laughing, and socializing ensued. CCTV captured Nathaniel's vehicle traveling further and further southeast. All in the meantime, cell towers would ping both Samantha's and Nathaniel's phones together. And while all of this was going on, her boyfriend Greg was watching her location travel further and further in the wrong direction. Turkey hunters would describe the location which the body was found. She very likely died in the black Chevy Impala, where she was then transported to the field that she was found in. And Dr. Thomas, a forensic pathologist, would reveal both the weapon and declare that over 120 wounds were identified on Samantha's body. She suffered severe wounds to her face, neck, shoulder, torso, back, lungs, legs, and feet. Just hours after Samantha's death, Nathaniel Rowland was caught on the surveillance cameras of 2 ATMs in the Sumter area, attempting to take cash out of Samantha's debit cards. Out of all 9 attempts, however, he was unsuccessful, and left the area empty-handed both times. During the entire trial, Nathaniel seemed to be taking notes at any given moment that he seemed uncomfortable. And uncomfortable is exactly how he should have felt, because on the 27th of July 2021, Nathaniel Rowland was found guilty of kidnapping and murdering Samantha Josephson, the jury deliberating for only a little over an hour to reach their verdict.
Indictment number 2019 GS 402450, the state of South Carolina versus Nathaniel David Rowland. It's an indictment for murder. We, the jury, find the defendant guilty. July 27, 2021. Juror number 130, were these your verdicts?
Yes.
Are they still your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 469, were these your verdicts?
Yes.
Are they still your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 169, were these your verdicts?
Yes.
Are they still your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 516, were these your verdicts?
Yes.
Are they still your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 635, were these your verdicts?
Yes.
Are they still your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 72, were these your verdicts?
Yes.
Are they still your verdicts?
Finding out that your child has died is, I can only imagine, the worst kind of nightmare that a family can endure. And if you specify that death as a sudden and abrupt murder, the words just completely escape my mouth. Devastation doesn't quite cut it. Samantha Josephson, by all counts, seemed like a very happy and generous person. She had a very bright future ahead of her, with plans to attend Drexel University and embark on a career that would positively influence people's lives. And this future was coldly taken away from Samantha by the hands of an opportunistic killer, in which the motive seemed to be nothing but financial gain off a student. The one key mistake that Samantha made here, and let's be honest, it happens to the best of us, is that she got into the vehicle of an unknown driver without checking their identity first. And by the widest of all margins, usually this would only end in a shocked and rather disgruntled driver. But in Samantha's case, this unfortunately cost her her life. Samantha's parents were beyond distraught when their daughter's life was ripped from their hands. But through that pain, they established the What's My Name Foundation, with a mission to educate the world on rideshare safety. If you're interested in learning more about this, I'll leave a link in the description below. A side note, but I can't even begin to imagine the terror that Greg must have felt throughout Samantha's disappearance. People use the Find My Friends app out of anxiety over security, and to witness the exact thing you're scared of happen in real time, that must have been beyond overwhelming. Following the loss of the love of his life, Greg changed his direction to pursue a career as a criminal prosecution lawyer, in honour of Samantha Josephson. He wishes to make a difference to the world, and deliver justice to victims inadvertently caught up with criminals. Samantha was eventually laid to rest at the Prineville Jewish Cemetery in New Jersey. And every year, those touched by Samantha's story attend a 5K run, in honour to the young woman whose life was cut so tragically, so abruptly, and so unfairly. Thank you so much for watching another video today by Coffeehouse Crime. If you found this video interesting, or if you learned something new today, then please remember to like the video. And if you haven't subscribed yet, then please do, it helps me out. Have you ever been in a similar situation to Samantha? And what do you do to keep yourself safe in these kinds of situations? Please let me know in the comments below. There's many more details to this case that I could have added, but I think it's good to just wrap it up there. Thank you again so much for watching this video today, and I'll be right here behind this camera, waiting for you in the next one. Until that moment arrives though, look after each other. Goodbye.